Okay, so it's 4:30. We're going to go ahead and start policy committee. Thank you everyone for coming. There's a lot of us. We'll start with introductions, as we typically do. Michelle Thompson, trustee, mother of Lakeland kiddos, and now grandmother of Lakeland kiddos.
And the mother of a staff member.
Oh, yeah. I am a mother of staff member.
I'm Lisa Arnold, superintendent, and I have 2 Lakeland graduates.
I'm Lacey Jacklett. I have 3 kiddos in Lakeland, and I work at Twin Lakes.
I'm Jacqueline Myers, mom of 3 kids in the district.
I'm Kathy Peterson. I'm a speech therapist and I can't talk.
Karen Conrad, mother of 2 graduates and a graduate myself, and a teacher here for years.
I'm Sarah Longstreet. I'm a parent of a Timberlake grad and a Lakeland student, and I'm a teacher in the district.
Dan Smith, I'm a parent.
I'm Lindsay Johnson, a teacher at Timberlake High School, and 2 kids in the district.
I'm Wendy Ziesmer, Garwood Library, and I'm a Lakeland grad, and so is my daughter.
I'm Jen Root. I teach at Twin Lakes. I have 2 Timberlake graduates and 1 at Timberlake.
Jody DeVore, Lakeland graduate, 3 graduates, and a teacher at Garwood.
I didn't see you sneak in.
Hi. Amanda Leach, teacher at Garwood, my 18th year teaching in the district.
Janelle Dexter, librarian at Lakeland Middle School and grandmother of future Lakeland students.
Melanie Worth, librarian at Timberlake Middle School, and Lakeland graduate. I have 2 children that graduated from Lakeland, and I will also have future grandchildren graduating from Lakeland here. I'm going to school, not graduating.
Missed something there. Cherokee Gordon, parent of 2 for Lakeland, also a grandparent of 1, and I teach at Lakeland Middle.
Rebecca Haas, 24 years in the district, 2 Lakeland students right now. 1 is graduating this spring, and 1 is a 6th grader at the middle school, and he is loving it. Teacher also.
Beth Lutzig, I teach English at Lakeland.
Chantel Kirk, I teach 2nd grade at Betty Kiefer, and I have 2 kids in the school district.
Lynn Pasley, 2 graduates of Timberlake and 1 soon to be graduate, and then I'll have no more kids in the district. It'll be very sad and nobody in my house.
Maria Parker, board clerk, and I have a 1st grader at Garwood.
Great. Okay, so at the end of the last meeting, we did get through several, but we sent 3 policies out for patron staff input. So we will review their input, see if we need to make corrections, changes, clarifications, whatever on the policy, and then we'll move on. And if anybody has any comments or any suggestions, just kind of blurt them out. We just kind of roundtable this. There's no formalities here, okay? I was handed 3 comments that aren't up there and was asked if I could just read them, so I shall. This one person on policy 2510, she liked the person liked the clarity on materials to be selected. On 2510P, references an Idaho code, but it is not included as a legal reference. Okay, so we'll need to look at that on the P. And then 2500, there's several comments. What are the district's guidelines and policies for age-appropriate material? It is not used as a reference in the bottom of this policy. Where do you access the library material review form? Is the library review committee what is the library review committee made up of? Who will be involved? District residents? Doesn't make sense. All students have to have approval from the principal to access the library ? Any student. I can understand current students and their parent, custodian, or legal guardian can challenge a book, but why district resident? This sets the district up for question by anyone residing in the district. We already have a person going through the library catalogs and finding fault with a lot of books that don't meet their standards. We as a district should identify a standard and policy, which we already have, okay, and abide by that. The policy I'm referencing to is that the parents can choose what books their children can check out. Each book has been marked and categorized with labels about the content. Why isn't the grievance policy not going to be used? Okay, so those are a lot of comments. We can circle back to those. Up here we have under 2500, I'm glad that the board is still valuing the library since one of the current board members is on social media saying that libraries are a waste of money. I'm hoping that his attitude isn't carried over to our school libraries. All right, I think this sounds good. I think this sounds good. I think this sounds good. Selection will be carried out according to the administratively adopted guidelines for the review and selection of the library materials. I would like some clarification on what these guidelines are. Well, that's not something we put in policy. So I would assume that if a parent or staff member wanted to see the guidelines, they could just come to the district office, right?
Yes.
Okay. If any community member may challenge, thank you, a book, how will they have access to the library in order to do so if they are not a parent? Additionally, who composes the library review committee? How does one become part of that? Do they need qualifications? Have we even set up anything for a library review committee? Because I thought we were supposed to, and then with all of this, I don't know where things stand with that.
Yeah, so we, and it's up at the top of the main document, right, sorry, down a little bit. That draft, Lakeland Library Book Review Process. We have been kind of slowly putting that together, waiting for the new law.
All right.
And that will dial all of those pieces in, but that's the document we would hand to parents who are wondering what is the process for all of it. We'll have all of that outlined in that.
Okay, so right now we do not have a library review committee, or do we?
We do not currently,
Okay.
but this new law requires that we will, so moving forward we will have.
Okay, I just know that we have been, the librarians specifically, and I didn't know if there were other people
No, we've just
helping.
got 2 people who've
Okay.
been voraciously reading.
Okay.
So it'll be good to have assistance.
So then I would think that once we determine the library committee, review committee, and how to be part of it, we'll send that out and everyone can
I'll
do it.
include that in our, I'll put it in the Lakeland highlights for the parents, and then we'll put information out on our social media for anybody else who's interested. I would anticipate that we have a library section on our website that, or under the parents and students tab, we could also put a Google form for anybody who wants to sign up to participate.
Do we have that with all of our committees? That are out there?
I don't know if we used to. That's how we initially got the committees, but I don't know that we've left them up there, so we could certainly do that.
Okay, I think we should, so that parents know where they can get involved and whatnot.
Yep.
Okay. In order to maintain, so 2510, in order to maintain books with opposing various diverse points of view, will certain books or issues be protected, or will patrons and teachers have to trust the library review committee over my librarian in principle? Okay. 2510P, librarians should be able to determine if a book needs to be removed, but as this is a task that takes a significant amount of time, it should not reflect negatively on the librarian if a book they have not yet reviewed becomes an issue if it was not a book they themselves put on the shelf. I don't know that is an issue at this current point. What kind of guidance should a librarian receive about adding books for pleasure reading to the collection, if any, besides the admission of obscene material?
Yeah, that's all going to be lined out in that procedure that we're working on.
Okay. Overall, the PMPs look thorough. However, in review of the links cited in the policies, I was unable to determine if the libraries will allow books that conflict with the conservative culture of our area. The policies reference age-appropriate materials. How is age-appropriate defined? I do acknowledge that parents complete a library form for each child, but I'd like to know what library materials our district is offering students, and first and after name. They don't say age appropriate in here, do they, in the law? Because they would have to define that.
Yeah, they don't.
They don't.
And the way we've defined it, and it's actually in the email follow-up to Celeste that Lynn put in there, but with each book it will tell us what the grade range, the appropriate grade range is for the reading level and the content within the book,
And that's coming from the author or the book publisher?
The publisher.
Okay.
I walked in on that conversation. Were you asking if the subcommittees, the Google form is still on the district website?
For all the other subcommittees? Like
for all subcommittees.
Are they still up there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
It's on your guys' page.
Perfect.
Just so you know, the publisher isn't the one that gives you the age and the grade.
Thank you for
It's
clarifying.
the like School Library Journal, Kirkus Reviews. It's those reviewers of books that figure out what the age level it's for, what it's appropriate for. They will give us the genres. They do all of that stuff. So we get all of that.
So it's not the publisher, not the author.
Not necessarily the publisher. But it is. I don't know, how would you call it?
Well,
the big people who.
Is it a clearinghouse?
Well, like we use Destiny. We purchase all of our books through Tidal Wave. Through Tidal Wave, it'll tell us this book is this grade band. And then it'll give us all the themes of the book, and so and then we read the reviews from like School Library Journal, and then we check all of those things before we add a book to our orders.
And
so are you guys actually reading the book before, or just the reviews before you decide to buy it?
Most, you know what, if we have questions, we'll read the book, if we question it. But most times the reviews are actually from these reputable book. Yeah, because this is school, they're going into schools usually. And so the people that review these books are very reputable. It's a big, I don't want to say it's a clearinghouse, but it's a big thing that goes through all these books. They read all of the books, they write down their notes, they say what grade, because you will get different grade levels. Sometimes you'll get a 5 through 8, but sometimes it may be 6 through 9. So there's not a huge variation in the grade level. And they usually all have the exact same genres. They'll say it's got this and this and this in it, and then that's what we'll tag it with, whatever is the major, what we feel the major genre is.
Okay, does our school district have any standards that we can comparatively say that these are in line with what's expected for 4th, 5th, 6th, 3rd, kindergarten seniors? I mean, do we have those standards?
I would say we probably, with regard to Lexile level, we definitely have, that's easy to find. That's kind of a nationally normed kind of a thing. But as far as like the content of what no.
Okay.
If you're speaking specifically about the content.
The protocol that I put together that we shared with you guys a few months ago, that was just a draft waiting for all of this to happen. I did put a criteria in there.
Okay.
But it's just a draft, so.
But I think what would be good then is.
So here was kind of our.
And this is the language right out of the law. I mean, so other than what we have in the law, no, we don't have any district specific.
But I haven't updated this because I was waiting on policy, so I haven't matched which actual law passed. And I mean, most of it's the same, but there might be some variation of a word here or there. I haven't updated it. I was just waiting until policy is passed and then update it from there.
Right, but here you have represent age appropriate material.
We added that.
But what my question or point is do we have standards for what we determine as age appropriate? And I heard you say we do, and then it should be in here. But
it's all of this, that it's within that. What if it's deemed age appropriate from their reviews, then there's an appropriate reading level, understanding, and accessibility to the students in the school. So it's all kind of lumped together. I don't define age appropriate because there's no definition where age appropriate is defined.
Yeah.
So we don't have any criteria for age appropriateness other than what the librarians decide based on the reviews or whatever they get.
To my knowledge, I looked for anything for definitions, and there isn't anything that exists that says this is a definition of age appropriate.
That would vary for so many students.
But I would say that, I mean, up until right now, the guidance that we get from Tidal Wave and these other companies is pretty accurate. I would say that every once in a while there will be content that a parent will say, I'm not sure that this is appropriate for middle school, and then we'll review it and make that decision, but that doesn't happen very often.
Is that
and
more
it's-
specific to the child themselves versus the overall age group? Because there are some kids that are a little more mature, a little less mature, but they still might be in the same grade level, same age category.
Which is why we have middle grade plus at the elementary school. We don't have YA at the elementary schools, but we do have middle grade plus, which is 5 through 8. And then at the middle schools, we have young adult, which is usually up to probably about 10th grade is what it goes to. Sometimes it may go a little bit higher. We have some books that I've actually read. There's one book that is called If I Stay, and it's actually for, I think, 8 through 12, but there's absolutely nothing. I've read it like 3 times. There's absolutely nothing in it. It's a perfect book for middle school, and the girls love it. Now, I won't put the sequel in my library because I think it's more geared towards high school for the sequel of the book, but the first book is amazing, and it's perfectly acceptable for the middle school.
That's what we look at. And that's what it gives us, the information. And then it goes down to the reviews.
Okay, so I mean, it looks, I mean, for lack of a better comparison, it looks just like kind of what you see when you go to Amazon or any other book respective.
But these ones will give us the genres, they'll give us the AR, the reading levels, they'll give us the Lexile levels, they'll give us all of the different genres that it comes with.
I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I think
No, I understand.
We don't have as much information. You don't have as much information as a movie. Movies have way more standards and they give you way more information, but this is about the most you can find on a book.
Right. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
But we've had several people asking, how are we coming up to age appropriateness?
Right. Yeah,
What I'm hearing is the district has nothing in place to determine that. It relies on tidal wave or wherever we're choosing to get the material
Well, and
from.
it relies on the librarians too to be cognizant of what they have in their libraries and if it's age appropriate. We're not going to put anything, I mean, I'm not going to put anything in my library, Melly's not going to put anything in her library that is going to jeopardize what we have in there and for our kids. We don't want anything in our libraries that is not age appropriate. I don't want anything in there that is overtly sexual. I don't want any of that stuff. It doesn't belong in my library. I have middle schoolers and I have to take into consideration their age group. I have 5 kids myself and I've been a librarian for 25 years, so I know what I can put in my library for middle schoolers and what I definitely can't have in there. So
maybe we need to shore up more so that parents can understand what age appropriateness is, all the components that go into determining that. And that way, there's some clarity and we all know what to expect. I think that would be really good.
But
it would be
does it need
helpful.
to be in policy, or does it just need to be something that's a little sideline so that if people are curious, they know what it is?
It probably is I would say it's the procedure, so I think that's what Michelle's.
Okay.
So if we're gonna say in our procedure that we're going to use age appropriate materials, then we will have to define
age appropriate
and how we are determining that so that the patrons know how we're doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be somewhere that it can be handed to parents to say this is what it is. It doesn't have to be in policy, but we do have to follow it up because parents are saying, how are we coming to age appropriateness?
Who's defining that several times throughout.
Yeah.
Yep. We'll make sure that we do that.
Perfect. Okay, where were we? What are you hoping to get from that? I don't know.
Some input.
Yeah, okay. So I think we're here. I think this sounds great. I think the part where it says that reflecting a variety of cultures is very important to me as a parent. I do not want to think that our library wouldn't include something just because I'm not affiliated with a certain type of culture. I think this sounds very good. This is a long one. Okay. So, oopsies, I'm not good with the mouse. There was some discussion last night about patrons, taxpayers being able to come into the library to view books. After more thought and discussion, I'm wondering how that would look. I wouldn't think that we want just anyone coming into our libraries to look at our book selection at any time of the day. That would be unsafe in my opinion. That process, or what process would the patrons need to go through to be allowed into our schools? would they be allowed at any time of the day? What if there are students in the library? I would be fine with maybe opening the libraries on the weekend and allowing the, where are we at? I hate that.
The public
to come into view.
I totally lost my spot.
Right where your cursor is.
Okay, perfect.
Mhm.
I would be fine with maybe opening the libraries on a weekend and allowing the public to come in to view books at that time. Well, that would work. I just have concerns with people coming into the school when students are present. We don't even allow parents to come into our elementary schools unless they go through the volunteer training. Of course, someone would need to be present to open the building on the weekend and answer questions. Oh, this is a lot. Okay.
So one thing that makes me think of is, and it's happening already on the district website, we actually have a link to Destiny, so a parent can go in and look for any book to see if it's in any of our libraries. So if there's a book that maybe somebody at church talked about that people are saying, oh, our kids shouldn't be reading that, and they're wondering if it's in our library, they can search it that way. And then if it is in the library and they want to take a look at it themselves to see if it's actually, if it is appropriate, they could reach out to the school and just talk to the admin assistant and say, I'd like to just come to the office and can you pull that book and I look at it? So
well, I guess we're
easily
Can
that
I
happen.
sideline into that real quick?
Please.
I don't think the intention was that they could check the book out from our school library, but that they could see the list and then they can go check it out from the public library or get it on Amazon.
The
or
whole
whatever.
list is on the district
Yeah,
website.
so I don't think like the intention was that they could actually take a book from the library, but be able to question a book that's in the way they can see the list and then
right. Well,
yeah.
this paragraph states that district residents or parents or guardians, students attending the district may be allowed access to library books at the discretion of the building principal. So that isn't a free-for-all that people get to come whenever they want. They have to go through the principal if they want to access the library.
District residents, is that anybody who lives here, even if they don't have children in the building?
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm a little confused as to why that's there.
They're taxpayers.
Well, and here's something
Gone
that,
back a few, sorry,
No, that's
gone back and forth a few times in this.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks ago, we were saying it should just be patron, or
Right.
should just be parents, custodians. And then last week, we added again district resident. And a big reason that I remember was because to make sure if we're wanting their levy support. That was a big reason that we added that.
but here's something else. One of
On the supporter schools, we have to.
Allison Knoll, who was here last week, said that why are we, the taxpayers are not even voting for our levies, so why are we even giving them access to our books? They don't want to support us, so why are we letting them have access to determining what is in and what isn't in our libraries? And there's been a lot of feedback on that portion that Melanie and I have both heard, that they're not happy that any Tom, Dick, and Harry can come in and ask to see a book in the libraries. They don't have children in the library, in the school. And that's a lot of the feedback that we're getting from people.
And those are typically going to be people quite vocal against public schools and against our levy.
I agree. Could be scary for us.
We've already got a list of over 900 books, almost 1,000 books that we are now having to go through. And that's out of the district. That's a lot. And the list keeps getting added to. It keeps growing and growing and growing. And we're doing the best we can, but this is going to take, if this happens and if you let the public, the non-school district families, it's just going to be a nightmare. We're not going to be able to do our jobs at all. We're not going to be able to help the teachers. We're not going to be able to help the students, because for the most time, we're going to be dealing with all of this stuff that's coming our way, and our shelves are going to be bare because we're going to have to pull all these books, and then there's nothing going to be there. And so that's a huge, and I know that's me and Melanie talking, that's huge. We're just not, we just feel like it's opening a can of worms.
Can I ask a question on that? Mm-hmm. So, for them to question a book, I thought they would have to be able to like reference like the page number in the book and then refer back to the bill on why they're questioning it. So we feel like that's going to be a lot that fits the bill.
like that
I think
of
that
these
they
items.
will think will fit the bill, but.
So, and then it just goes to the library committee to review, right?
Yep.
Like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's.
But you have to think, there's almost 1,000 books on that list already. And while we are trying to go through and read some of them, or some that we've already read, and we're trying to make notes, we've actually made a copy of the list, and we are keeping our own notes on the sides of things that we've pulled and things that we've said are okay and that we are okay. We've either moved them up to the high school or we've said they're fine for our libraries. It's continually growing, and this is just going to be
like 1,000 books on the list that they believe fits the content of the library bill.
They just put on anything that they don't like.
And that's exactly what they do.
Yeah.
And they don't even sometimes get the reviews right, because that one book I was talking about, If I Stay, they have next to it, talks about suicide. That's not what it's about. It's about a young girl who's in a car accident with her family. Her entire family is killed in the accident. She's the only one. She's in a coma. She has to decide if she wants to stay with her boyfriend, who talks to her all the time, or if she goes and just he's with her family.
She's making an internal struggle.
It's an internal struggle. So it's not even about suicide. So they don't even have this stuff right. And as it is now, we're having to go through almost 1,000 books trying to determine if what they put on that list is even accurate.
So the procedure, though, might actually help with that, because I think the discussion was that in the procedure for calling a book into question, they would actually have to read it and provide the page number and the exact, like, that maybe that would.
Law is it violating?
Yeah, I think that proposal and recommendation that we're trying to pursue would be it's not just you're reading the book and then there's a legitimate concern and then you're bringing it and then we're going through it. But I guess I would just say I do feel like we have pulled books from that list that are legitimate books that have to be pulled. So the hard part for me is I do think we have to do our due diligence. Like, there are books in the library that we're not comfortable with, and we didn't buy them. They're from 30, but they are there. So I feel like we have a responsibility to do our due diligence to pull those books. And if 20 books were labeled and we didn't pull any of them, but we have pulled them. So that's the hard part for me, because if there's a book that's inappropriate, none of us want that in there. Mm-hmm. So that's the hard part.
Well, and we've gone through. I mean, we started this before the whole policy thing, when just in the very beginning, and we looked through our libraries to see what was YA, what was adult, and we started looking through, and we saw authors, and we're like, oh heck no. Yeah. But you look at when the book was purchased, and it was purchased like 30 years ago, and it hasn't even been read or checked out in the last 15 years. So it's like, why is it even on the shelf? But that goes to who the librarians that are there now, and it's just a daunting task to go through that Lakeland Library. There was a lot of stuff in my library when I got there, because it used to be a high school, or it used to be up to 9th grade as well. And there was a lot that the former librarian had on the shelves that I looked at and went, oh heck no, this doesn't belong here. And so I immediately pulled it off. And we're trying to play catch up with the times, because nobody's bothered to weed out Lakeland's library since Tiffany first started, and she got rid of a bunch of stuff. And then nobody's been able to go back and do it again since.
So can I just ask, the 900 to 1,000 books that you're having to go through, when someone has a concern, are they just emailing you guys right now, the titles?
No, they have a spreadsheet.
They have a spreadsheet.
And they can just go add whatever they want?
Yep.
And then I guess and this might be a really silly concern, but is if we're going to have district residents wanting to look at books, is there a process for verifying they're actually a district resident? Because then in that case, they're not a taxpayer in this district. And
well, that's my recommendation. Lisa and I have been talking about that, is putting a proposal together that we have something where that's what we're looking at. Like, it's just a more methodical process of how we're, because prior to this, there wasn't, to their point, we didn't have a very good vetting process. And so we are now trying to make sure that things are within their age band. Like, we're trying to put that, but we don't have it written anywhere. So that's what we're trying to do now, is write some of that protocol down. So it's just, we have a process of how we're rolling that out. And pulling books that are not appropriate. And I mean, unfortunately, there have been books that are in our library, and whenever they were purchased, they're not appropriate. There isn't anybody here that would think they were appropriate. I was embarrassed when Lisa read them aloud. They were so not appropriate. So
and we were at church.
Is that something then that if a committee is formed would be able to help them with? I mean, that's a lot of books.
Or does it just scratch this list because they haven't gone through the process of proving their district resident? We just say, if you have something on this 900 to 1,000 list, we are not looking at this book unless you go through the process of the review committee.
And that probably sounds petty, but I know that when people have frustrations, they have friends in other districts, and then word spreads, and then before you know, you have people who don't live here wanting to see like, oh, well, it's in Lakeland's library, and I feel like it kind of opens up a bigger.
Is this the Clean Books for Kids?
Yes.
People? Yeah. So they're actually looking at the actual content of the book, not just looking at reviews. And another point would
but not always, because they didn't get they've gotten several books completely wrong. Several.
Well, another point too, in defense of continuing to keep district residents on the list would be parents are super busy. I mean, there's like 2 or just parents. I know there's lots of teacher parents here, but just parents.
No
just
such thing as just.
Well, I'm a parent, and my daughter's a 6th grader, and her lexile level is way higher, so giving her a book that a 6th grader would read wouldn't benefit her academically. She would be challenged. And so making sure that we're able to hit all of their needs, we need to be able to find a way to do it so they're not inundated, but we have good, solid books that aren't going to cause any other issues.
Right. I'm just more speaking to the law, with the new law, and that if there are district residents who are interested in keeping our libraries with good, healthy material and everything, I personally, as a parent, appreciate if they're looking out and trying to bring something to our attention, especially if there have been 100+ books pulled.
And I think there's a lot of people that would be outside of just parents or legal guardians, like retired teachers. I mean, if we limit it to just parents and legal guardians, a grandparent can't question, a staff member wouldn't be able to question. A retired, if someday, 40 years from now, Lynn retires and she's got a concern about a book, then, she wouldn't be able to question. And I don't see any need for them to come into the library, but I think them being able to raise a concern, they can go check it out somewhere else, but I think
and I'm not
40 years. She thinks you're really young. I'm like,
I'm not against having district residents. I think it does help with building trust and transparency. I just was thinking, is there going to be a way then to verify that you are actually a resident of the district?
And maybe on the form you could just be like, attach your driver's, a screenshot of the driver's license or something.
In our protocol, we just put that. I mean, I guess I would just say, like, everybody here, I think, wants the same thing. We want to make sure that we have quality literature and quality opportunities for all of our kids. Unfortunately, there have been things in our library that we have pulled because they're not, really not appropriate. And we didn't buy them, they were for forever ago. So last year, it's probably been a year and a half now, we've started a vetting process, and the girls have been very, very diligent. But there's thousands upon thousands, so that's what she's talking. We're continuing because, and most of them have been fine, but there are a lot we have to go through that, and in prior years that wasn't happening. So we are playing the catch-up game. So Lisa and I just really want to put a protocol together that it defines that, so parents feel really comfortable that we are doing our due diligence, that everybody's having the opportunity to, if somebody doesn't like a book, but we don't have any of that written down, so that's what we're trying to do. So we'll start with policy. I have a draft of a protocol. The board will have to approve that so that we're all on the same page and there's clarity as what we're doing. So but an outside educator doesn't necessarily know what age appropriate means. So we're just trying to have parents feel comfortable with what they're reading, what their kids are reading.
I think the other part of our current reality is people are watching the news and they see and hear about things that are happening in Oregon, Washington, California, New York, pick a blue state, and they make the assumption that if it's happening there, it's probably happening here. And we absolutely, Lynn and I, every time we have to run any kind of a levy, we absolutely hear from people who don't want to support us because they don't like that we have pornography in our libraries. So, and we did have books that would qualify as pornography in our libraries. That's a true statement. We have pulled books that I was horrified to know that we had in our libraries. So I think
we no longer have that.
Right, but they've only been through part of the list that was provided to them from this person. That's where these titles came from. So I agree it's a lot, but I think that these people are paying taxes to our schools. They don't have any control over whether or not they have to pay taxes to our schools. True. It's if the majority of the patrons say we approve the levy, everybody's taxed for the school district, and so I just want to build trust with people, and that the only way I know how to do that is to be open and honest with people. So if somebody hears that this is a bad book and they check and it looks like it's on our shelves, I would rather them ask about it and find out that, oh, we pulled that a long time ago, but we forgot to delete it from the system, so we'll do that, so that they know that we actually really care about our kids. I guess I don't want to make more work for Janelle and Melanie, but I do think that we're in a position where we have to build some
district residents
trust.
can challenge a book, but let's not let them have access into the libraries, because they can check, they can look and see what we have on our thing, on Destiny. Everybody has access to that. So they can, and then they can go pick the book, and then they can challenge it, but let's not give them access into the school.
I think that's reasonable. I do think that would create a lot of logistical issues
That's
for
not
the front end and
it's a
safety and all of
safety
that.
issue.
Yeah. So I think that makes reasonable sense.
Well, if I was the principal and it was written this way, I would tell you that if you don't have a kid in our school and I don't know who you are, you're not going anywhere past the office anyway. I will get the book for you. You can look at it right here, and then you can give it back to me, and I'm going to put it back, and then you get to leave. But that would be the extent of access.
Well, a statement is they can have access to library books at the discretion of the building principal. Right. It's not saying you get to walk into the library whenever your face pops up at school.
No, and we understand that, but it's just, I don't know. I feel like if you're going to leave in district resident, then they can find access to that book someplace else. They do not need to come to the school.
So just access to the list of books, and maybe just I think they
can access
through Destiny or whatever.
They can access Destiny off of the district website.
I think that makes sense.
How would they know how to do that? Out of curiosity.
Yeah.
It's under libraries. Well, it's on the school district website. If they go to libraries.
So if a patron calls the school and says, hey, I'd like to know if I can have access to this book, then the office has to tell the patron, no, you have to go to the website and you can access it that way. We're not going to let you have it if you come to the school, or we're not going to let you look at it at the school.
But they can see,
this title is within our district at some point. Or
they would access the list. Or they would find out it's not even in the library, so I don't need to call and ask.
And it depends, because the catalog shows all schools. So you've got 12 schools, so you have 12 libraries worth of books on that Destiny catalog. They're all there, they can look them up, and it tells you what school they're in and everything. So it's right, there it is.
But it doesn't give them access to the book, so.
So how often now are residents connecting with you as the librarian to look for books?
Except for this 900, almost 1,000 list, that's it.
One person.
One person? Okay. And so you understand this language has been already in the policy?
Oh, yeah.
That was, okay.
Yeah.
So you're thinking that now that language that's already been in the policy is going to be a big issue?
I feel like,
well, now that we have a bounty on us for $250.
But only if you don't do anything with the book, right?
Yeah,
is that right?
But I do think people now are going to have an interest to come look for stuff.
Okay.
Can you just add, to have access to the list of books in the libraries? Because
anybody can access it.
Yeah, but put it in the policy, not, you can come I mean, you have no idea who's coming into the school if they say they live here.
We better have an idea who's coming
I
to
mean,
the school.
yeah, but you,
I don't think they should just be.
I mean, I can
nosing
say I
in.
live here.
Right.
Right.
I know you're gonna check my ID.
Right.
But
And
There's a lot of snowbirds.
again, this isn't access to the school library. It's just about the book.
I don't agree to having willy-nilly adults come into our libraries.
Well, we're not saying that. They're not,
Yeah, they're
that
not going
doesn't
into
say
the
that.
library, but
But
they
it
would
says
come into
access to the
building.
books.
To the books within
Right, so they could
but
literally
not-
walk into the office and say, I'd like to see Tommy Boy, or whatever that ridiculous book was that was at Lakeland High School. And we hand it to them, and they are appalled at what we're handing them in the office. And they say, okay, thank you very much, but they don't have to go to the library.
Yeah.
That doesn't say they get to go to the library.
Right.
It just says that they get access to the book.
And it's at the discretion of the principal. It's not just, I'm there, therefore give me the book. It's there, I'm there, I get to have a conversation with the principal, and the principal can weigh in on whether or not I'm supposed to have access to the book.
So since this has been the policy for forever, can we leave it the way it is and see how problematic this new library bill becomes? And if it becomes a situation where you feel like you're being inundated by lots and lots of different people, we could bring it back to the board to reconsider. I mean, we could spend the next hour just talking about this one little thing. And I know it's an issue because we have one person who's giving you a long list, but that person happens to live in the district. So, but she's also been super helpful in making sure we've pulled some books that needed to be pulled. So I guess.
Can I just make a little sidebar here? And I realize that's not something that necessarily would be something we could put into policy, but I think that maybe it could be a consideration for budgetary considerations in the future, that maybe putting our money where our mouth is. Like, we want to be able to, you know, support going through these books, and maybe offering some support staff resources to our librarians to handle these things so that they aren't inundated and swimming in these requests. Maybe just be thoughtful of that in the future, that might help alleviate some of those concerns about being inundated with that, and have some help for them to go through some of that stuff.
I think that's the intent of the library committee.
That committee would actually go in and help them sort through those lists, not just take the books that were, okay, I'm sorry.
Well, and I would think that if there is a list of 1,000 titles, then that's the first thing the library committee is actually tasked with, is ferreting through those to determine merit one way or the other. Even though there is no form, I don't think we should just toss the list out, because I think the list has relevancy. It's a starting point. So
the goal is that we're getting it away from 1, 2, 5, 10 people, that hopefully it's a group of people, so it's their shared effort to vet books, so it's not falling on one person or 2 people, because
you really need 3 people to read the book.
Right, we're just trying to put, some protocols in, so there's not one person that's feeling like they're sharing the load of it.
The other part of this process that I personally like with regard to the committee is the committee will read the books, and then the committee is going to make a recommendation to the board, who is either going to approve or deny based on the recommendation. So at that point in time, the onus for the $250 now rests with the district and not on an individual.
Right.
And so in my mind, that protects our librarians from feeling like they're on an island having to make hard decisions on their own, and then potentially being financially responsible for the decision. So I do think this is a good process.
Are we back to the problem of this list of 900 to 1,000? Now we're back to the problem that we spoke of the last few weeks, where we are waiting for this library committee to review them, and they are pulled while we're waiting. And then as the list continues to grow and the library committee gets really backed up, what do we do there?
Well, we don't know that this list that these are all books that are going to be, a formal complaint is going to be set forth with it. We don't know that these 900 and some books, that somebody's going to come in and start challenging all 900.
Oh, maybe I misunderstood Michelle then.
We're going through the list that, no, as she is creating this list and keeps adding to it. We are slowly going through it and looking at all the titles, and it tells us what school they're in, whether it's Lakeland or Timberlake. And we are going through, and we've started off with the ones that we know, the ones that we've read, the ones that are very familiar with us, and we've started going through those authors that we know probably shouldn't be in there. We're going through and making sure those authors are taken out. Stephen King is one of them. Another one was George Martin, the Game of Thrones series. So we made sure we got all of that stuff out of there. So we won't know
Out of
anything.
the library or off of the list?
Out of the library.
Okay.
We've taken them out of the library. But we put on the list that they've been removed.
Okay.
So we won't have anything until after July 1st when this law goes into effect. That's when they can start doing this, challenging anything that's in our libraries.
And this, just so the whole committee is clear, this list is put together by a community member who is super passionate about making sure that we are not putting books in front of kids that we shouldn't be. And so this is not a list of I'm challenging these books.
Mm-hmm.
This is a list of you might want to take a look at this book and see if you think it's actually good for kids in the library. So it's been a collaborative effort. She's not forcing this on us.
But it has helped us clean out some of the books that we do not absolutely need in our library.
I just misunderstood that. I thought what Michelle was saying is that you were saying that would go to the library committee, that list would.
We're afraid that the books that are on this list, they're going to, if we haven't already removed them, but we find that they're okay for our libraries, we're waiting for that out of the fall. They're going to start putting in challenges.
But that's not what you, sorry, I'm not right.
No, you are correct. That is what I suggested, was that because what I heard you first start off with is that it's very overwhelming to have this list of 900 to 1,000 books. So when the library committee is created, it would seem logical that that list would then be passed off to the library committee so that people can start getting their eyes on what is it that we're looking at, because I can't imagine that we're going to be inundated with hundreds of challenging forms. I don't know, but I can't imagine that occurring, and I pray it doesn't occur, because then that would really be bad.
Well, that would be super concerning, because then what did we put in the library?
Exactly.
Yeah, just the language in the bill is
well,
is
and so that was the
difficult to
other
read.
piece I just wanted to caution everybody. So this bill is about obscene materials, and so they define that. So, and I would say, I haven't looked at the list in a while, but I would say a lot of the list was that adult content, like that was the genreification, and some of them, again, were forever ago that we purchased them, and so the stuff that has been removed, they're not in our elementaries, they're not in our middle schools, because we don't have adult titles, a genreification of adult in those. So that's why we initially, our first round was, okay, if it says that it's a grade band of K5, then it's going to stay at K5. If it's supposed to be 6, 7, then it's going to go to middle school, then on to high school. So then we started looking at the adult genreification, and then we've even started looking at the mature adult, or whatever.
The young adult.
The young adult. Like, so it's the challenge is specific to this library law that's going to come into effect on July 1st. It's specific to obscene content. Now, there's other things where we're just like, it's just not, one, we've pulled books that just are just not quality, they're super old, nobody's checking them out anymore, and so, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why they're recycling some of those. So I feel like they have done, for the last year and a half, the librarians have done an outstanding job of really looking at that adult genreification and, okay, is it just a mature topic, or are there truly physical acts that we feel like you need to read that at your home, not at school, right? And so those are the things that they have pulled. You guys would all, if you read them, would agree that it's not appropriate at school.
Well, and we're also waiting
pretty
until
sure we were
May
going to
3rd when we have a Zoom meeting with the state librarian to go over what exactly, with the lawyer and the state librarian, to determine exactly what the bill means regarding the harmful to minors, the sexual content. We have specific questions regarding nudity, because you know you have art books, you have health books that have statues. You know, the Statue of David is in art books, and you've got Venus Rising and all these other things.
Yeah,
and
there's a lot of
so there's a lot
ambiguous
of
pieces, but then there are definitely things that are super clear of like, this shouldn't be in a library. And so,
there's definitely clear parts of it.
But I think if we have a committee going through that, reading it, being able to give a recommendation to the board, it will feel like there's more
So are we solving the problem of the 900 to 1,000 books
Yeah,
on
we're
this
solving.
list?
We're slowly
It's still you
solving.
guys,
Yeah.
okay, not the library committee?
No,
We don't
I-
have a committee yet.
We don't
Right.
have a committee.
Once we have the committee,
They
I
will
would
help with
hope
that.
that would transition over
Right.
so that
If
there's
it-
more hands on deck.
If they're challenged, yeah.
They would have to file the actual
Well, I don't want the
grievance
list to
form.
be thrown away.
No, it's not gonna be.
We're
thrown
going
away.
through every
Okay.
single one of them.
Okay.
Yeah,
We are.
absolutely, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's keep going. I want to keep this section highlighted when the policy comes to the board. I can discuss with them the discussions over district residents and the concern for what that may or may not mean. Okay. Entrust the school librarian with responsibility for building and maintaining a collection of age-appropriate materials. There needs to be more transparency than just entrust the school librarians. There is a significant history of librarians admitting inappropriate material, both nationally and in this district. I suggest the process of curating library materials be led by, but not controlled by, librarians. Parents need to be notified of new material and have an opportunity to comment. Okay. The policy has the same issue, this policy has the same issue as 2500. There needs to be more transparency than just entrust the school librarian. There's a significant history, yada, yada, yada. Okay, no issues. So, all right, what does it say? So, the board entrusts the school librarian with the responsibility for building and maintaining a collection of age-appropriate materials that adhere to district guidelines and policies. Okay, materials will be selected to provide for the interest and needs. Excuse
The
me?
librarian will be, the librarian will be following this bill, so right, thinking
Well, and in
entrust
my
the
mind,
librarian.
If the librarian is also adhering to the district guidelines and policies, whatever the history of, not stated because it wasn't specific to any building, school, or library, I would imagine then that now moving forward, along with that bill and the policies that have been put forth by the board, that any librarian is going to follow to the letter
Well,
the
isn't
policy.
it policy now that for new materials, there is public feedback? before
I don't know
those are
about-
No, that's
approved,
only
or
on
is that
supplemental,
supplemental?
that's
Okay.
just supplemental curriculum.
There was for a long time, but then we
You
stopped.
can't, no, you can't.
We were inundating the board with that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's the whole point, is trust the librarian.
Is the list on Destiny sorted by date? Like, is there like, can you sort it by date to see like what was most recently added?
You can't do Destiny Discover, it'll show you the newest books that have been
The
added to your
new-
collection.
That's the only way to
I don't
do
know
it.
if you want to
There-
put
we
it
don't
in
have,
the
there's not
policy,
lists
but
or anything like
in
that.
practice,
Like,
I mean, each
principals
school
have
can,
to
I mean, each
report
school
to
can
the
tell you
librarians
what
every
books they've
report.
added
That's the
by
only
just
way
going
that
back
you
and
can-
looking.
But like if, like to satisfy that,
Okay.
You want
that's
to
it
add
on
that
like
in there.
Let's see here.
what's been added, is that on what the public would have access to? When you
Like
said
if
on
you-
Destiny
Or
Discover?
even
No,
put it on the
because they
school
don't-
website that said, look what's coming to the library, new list of titles.
Yeah, that's, I was just wondering
Yeah.
if that was like already on there, like if that
Well,
resource
so,
was
like,
already available.
this is what your kids have access to. It's Destiny Discover, and it says these are the books that have been recently added to your library.
Oh, so it tells them.
Oh, okay. Now, is that something that like,
Yeah.
is that through that same link that the public has access to? Okay.
Well, do they do Destiny
Okay,
Discover?
so,
No, when they all, it doesn't.
So
do
the
that.
board-
Number 3.
right, but I'm looking at the
The
policy.
kids,
and I'm
your
looking
kids
at
have
the
access
whole.
to Destiny Discover.
So,
I don't know.
board trustees.
We can
I just-
see-
I
know
just
that, but
actually-
we can see it because
Policy of the
we're
board
doing
to
it
entrust the
ours.
librarian.
So,
Well, I see
know
that.
that. I know that,
Building and
but,
maintaining a collection
oh,
of
when they, do they, when they log in as themselves?
They log in, and it goes right to Destiny Discover.
materials will be selected.
Yeah.
So that resource is already in place then?
See, my
for them to
kids
be able
don't
to see,
even,
like-
they just like to go one on the
Okay,
shelf.
yeah, yeah, which is great, like
Yeah.
cheaper books, that's.
They know where the genres are, they know what the shelves.
Because it's right here. They have a.
Yeah, so I can see all of the
See, but
different.
they don't have, I'm just curious. because
The
they don't have all of
administrative
them.
lead
Yours
doctor
is one of them that you have to decide.
Yeah, my kids, when my kids log in, it goes straight to Destiny Discover.
My kids in Lynn's bill.
Okay,
Because then that's just on
So
the
then what you're
district
trying to
libraries
do is-
link, that
Well,
under
right-
that is how
right
they pull up
now,
the Destiny, is that
Any
right?
book that
Yeah,
these
I'll
two
show you.
want
Sorry,
The principal has to.
so you go here.
Okay, is that?
And then you go under,
I don't know that
yeah,
it's written anywhere.
under departments, go to libraries.
That's the practice, okay.
So it needs to show up in the guidelines.
And then you scroll, this is our library page, and then follow it, Destiny.
So within these
Okay.
guidelines,
And then you can
does
access
it
any
state?
school.
So I just did it
And then you
online.
click on that, it brings up
Does it
that.
say
I just went to the district website and did all the stats.
Librarian works in
Perfect. Thank you.
conjunction with
My kids
the
never use it, so.
principal.
Recently, recently added it.
Yeah, so that's already.
What's new?
I don't know that
You
I have
always
it
have
written there, but I don't
always
have
just
it.
not there too. I know, it's like the new, the
It should be,
new.
because parents should be able to understand
It's the same thing in the
how a book
Yeah.
gets its way to the library. So
I
I'm just a
have it.
library
You've been
reporter.
doing
I
this.
didn't add
Yes.
any of that stuff because I wasn't sure if our practice would change. What we're doing. Language from statute and it's age appropriate because it's what we did. But as far as like our current, if we're gonna, when I originally wrote this, I said the library committee can use language material. I mean, I wanted the legal and the policy to drive this, so I didn't add.
Well, and I do think that the library review committee should be looking at the materials. So maybe, I mean, before the book is purchased or whatnot, there needs to be some collaboration between library review principals and librarian, so that the more hands and eyes that are in this, the less likely we are to have more problems occur. But the whole.
No, that's what we were just talking about. That, I just told Michelle, it's not written anywhere, but our practice is they don't buy a book without principal participation in that process, but it's not listed anywhere.
That's why if somebody has
Collaborative reading between principal librarian.
I'm just trying to.
So the process would be, if I was a parent and I pulled a book and I was concerned about it, I would talk to the librarian and let them know that I have a concern. I'd probably let the principal know. If my giving you a concern doesn't make anything different happen, then I could choose to fill out the challenge form. If I fill out the challenge form, then the committee participates, because my goal in all of that is to take the onus off of one person and put it
And the committee would be teachers
and then they would, and we would, there would have to be what we talked about, a minimum of 3 different people reading the book, so that then they're coming together to talk about whether any of it fits, and then they would make their recommendation to the board, and then the board would either approve or deny the book. But then at that point, they're the ones on the hook.
Last week I looked early, so we added, the first step is principal librarian again.
Well, that's our practice. That's always been our practice. So that.
But we deleted it last year.
But this is not the process. This is just the overarching policy. Lynn's writing the administrative procedures and processes, and those pieces will still be there.
Oh, okay. I left early, so I must have happened.
Yeah.
Because we deleted that.
Yeah.
Went back to just library committee first.
Okay.
I do appreciate all the passion around books.
All right, so I mean, we could add language here through collaboration with the building principal and the library review committee. If that is how the protocols and procedures are going to go. Okay.
But I don't know if that's part of like what means.
Lisa?
Yes, ma'am.
We changed what we started changing what we were doing with that, with the librarian. They order their books, and the books are coming back to Janelle and I'm also making sure before it goes to the district.
That'll be part of our process.
Will you just email that to me?
what you just said.
Remember,
That's weird.
they have to, all the other
We're checking
librarians
all of
are
the
running
orders
their
reports
books
just
through
through
the,
Yeah. Through what?
through these two.
Oh, okay.
So, as multiple librarians, so there are lots of eyes looking at it before it's purchased.
That'll be looking at their books, if it's their eyes.
Well, it would be that way.
Okay, yeah. So if it's the principal and the library review committee, then, I mean, that just expounds it even more, or expands it. Yeah. So what does everyone think in adding language on this first sentence? So we're entrusting the school librarian with the responsibility for building and maintaining a collection of age-appropriate materials that adhere to district guidelines and policies in collaboration with the building principal and the library review committee.
But doesn't that put the library review committee into ordering books? That's another.
How do you get there? I know what this is saying is it's trying to become more transparent in the fact that there's not just one or two people that are in control of what gets ordered and what doesn't. What I'm hearing is that we don't have any protocols in place at this moment, but we do have kind of a standard practice that the librarians work in collaboration with the principals. But that's not in the policy. And we're establishing a protocol so that we can give parents something and say, this is how it happens. So if we clean up, or if we add more language in here that's saying that the board is entrusting the school librarian with the responsibility of building and maintaining the collection of age-appropriate materials, working basically in collaboration with the building principal and the library review committee. So that it's just not the librarian that's ordering the book and putting it on its shelf, which I understand that's not happening, but we don't have anything that says that's not happening. Does that make sense?
So I guess we need to clarify, is the library review committee reviewing books after the fact or before the fact? That they actually come into the library?
They're supposed to do the challenges. The library review committee
That's
is
what
supposed to
I'm
be
hearing,
for
but
the challenges.
to me, that's not what that says.
Yeah.
That's not what that says.
I guess I should say
Correct.
this, we don't have a library.
We don't.
I'm just recommending we create one. We have not known what, where, when, why.
If this wasn't a policy, if this is what we decide that this is the policy, then something needs to come up ASAP, because librarians are gonna need to start ordering for next year, and we don't have a committee in place to help them with that process. No, nothing new is getting ordered moving forward.
Don't our teachers, our grade level teachers also request books to be read too? So shouldn't they be part of that?
And I think there's language in there about collaborating with teachers to make sure that they have books that are pertinent to what they're teaching. That's in there.
They're in there somewhere.
Yeah, that's in
classrooms, right? That's true.
This is specific for library materials. Yeah.
Lynn, can I just ask about the committee that's not a committee yet?
Created yet? Yes.
How is that gonna be formed? Do we know?
So, again,
we're working on
my
that.
recommendation would be this. We currently, for every committee we have, we created a Google form like a year and a half ago. So if you wanted to participate in long range, if you wanted to participate in strategic, if you wanted to be part of a curriculum adoption, the supplement, whatever, we have a whole form, and here's all the committees that we offer in the district that we give patron input for. You can participate in any and all of them. So I would add this committee to that list, probably resend it out because it's been on the website for a long time, and anybody that wants it, teachers, librarians, parents, I mean, I guess if kids wanted to, anybody that wanted to participate could sign up to participate, and then I think we'd bring this group together and talk about this is our why, this is the criteria. Like, that's how I envisioned it, that people that want to participate would, and they'd sign up just like we've done with every other committee that we've had where we've allowed it to be,
So what might be problematic with the way it's written right now, Michelle, with the library material review people, is if we haven't purchased the book yet and we're saying that you have to read it in order to give a recommendation,
Right.
we don't have the book to read. So
Okay.
that's
So then I guess maybe we need to understand, how does the librarian pick the book? What's their process in it? So that, because I get what the parent put in is there needs to be more inclusion instead of exclusion of parents
Which would be
from
part
their
of that
perspective.
committee.
What's that?
Which would be part of that committee, right?
right, but the problem
They
with the
could,
committee
yes.
is if we're in the process of purchasing books, we don't actually have a book to put in their hands for them to read. And we're saying we don't want you just to read a review about the book, we actually want you to read the book.
Right.
Because I think the other piece of this whole puzzle that we haven't really talked about yet is we do have two competing laws that we have to deal with. We have this law that's specifically about obscene material for kids, and then we have the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which says that kids have a right to have access to intellectual content, and we have to be careful, and we're being really strongly encouraged by our attorneys to be very careful about what we don't put in the libraries. So whatever our form is going to be, I think we have to be very specific about what content we're uncomfortable having, and these are the things we're looking for, and we're going to have to be pretty black and white. So that's
on the
part of-
First Amendment component, though. I mean, we're not required to provide certain books in the library. So how would that be a
No.
First Amendment
There have been
issue?
lawsuits have been won.
Yeah.
Because we didn't provide a book.
Because
Because
we've
you go
taken
down the
books out.
rabbit hole.
Oh, because you've
censoring.
taken them out,
Yeah.
not provided.
You go
So
down
we-
the, rabbit hole
So,
censoring.
yeah, there's this whole discrimination thing there that we're being, we're just being encouraged to be cautious, so.
Except, I mean, I'd really like to see Megan and Amy's input on that, simply for the fact that we have a public library, and the public library is where a kid or a parent or whatever can get whatever they want. This is taxpayer-funded resources.
Right, I know,
So-
but there's case law that shows that parents have won suing school districts because
They don't have anything that represents their family.
Yeah, so we just have to be cautious, like.
Okay, get into
This, but remember, we also have our gentrification, so we have an opt-in for certain library books, so.
Right, that's what I'm saying, I think we're gonna have to,
Right.
when we put that together.
But I guess if we've taken Stephen King out and my family's all about it, what you're telling me is I can now sue because you've removed it from the school library, and I want my kid to be able to have access to it. That seems absolutely ridiculous.
Well, that one's those are adult books, though.
They're adult books, though.
Doesn't matter. If they were in our library and you took them out, that can be viewed as
And it
censorship.
can, you're right, it absolutely can.
I mean, that's
Somebody
silly.
could sue to put that book back in the library.
Right.
That's why legal people are involved.
Right.
It's just, we just have to be cautious.
I just want to come back to the point that you made. I think that if we include the library review committee in this policy, then we're going to be automatically out of compliance because that's going to take a bit to form. So I think that's a little bit hazardous to include that as part of the selection material. I mean, I understand the intent behind it, but I think it's going to put us in hairy territory because that's going to take a bit to get rolling.
And
I wouldn't want
this-
us to be out of compliance straight out of the gate.
Especially for a committee, especially for a committee we don't have yet.
And this portion is specifically for purchasing the books for the library, so it
This is
doesn't
just
really need to go
library
through the library
materials.
review committee.
I feel like that's
It's
where
just
we
the
trust
librarians
librarians
and the
and
principals.
And the teachers.
Okay, but what we're also trying to do respectfully is help the parents understand that they have reason to trust. And when we've been forever cutting them out, what they're saying now is we want to be in.
Could we?
And that's this comment, I mean, there have been a few.
True, but isn't that where we can just say, these are all the books that we have in our library and we are including you, and not having every single person that, I mean, it's just involved. It's really frustrating that we're not trusting teachers and librarians and principals that they are capable and educated and totally capable of purchasing new books, and that other people have to have their hands in that and saying, you won't know what books to purchase, this is what we need to purchase. That just really, really irks me, obviously. And then why not just say, well, these are all the new books, because as she just showed us that this is all the new books in our library.
Well, and as a
That
parent,
just-
if I'm
that
really
might
concerned
be
about a
interesting.
book, I'm going to do my due diligence to reach out and find the book. I'm not going to say like, give me.
We should, right, yeah.
Right.
To get the
I will
approval
go
from
do
all
my
the
part and
patrons to
seek
buy
it
your
out
book.
and
Right,
ask
and that's what
questions,
we're
and I
gonna-
think
that's
parents
where
who are
that's
really
gonna fall
concerned will
into.
do that.
Could we have maybe like, I think I understand the heart of wanting more participation and transparency, but I also don't want to have the logistics of that like put everything at a stalemate just because it takes a while to make that process streamline and make sense. So what if there was just since that Destiny already shows new books added to the library, what if like in their monthly newsletter, like, hey, here's the link to the new books we added this month. That way we're keeping the parents updated on what's been added that's new.
Okay.
And just maybe having, does that make sense with like
And that
what,
needs to become part of the protocol.
if there's like in your monthly newsletter for the school, like, hey, here's the new books we added this month.
Books
That way you can still purchase with your current.
So no one can come back and say,
But
you know, never.
But here's the thing,
So I can actually be
but
where
here's
all
the
new
thing,
books
too,
are
that
read, we send
you've
out.
got to remember that when the librarians are purchasing books, especially for the elementaries, they are purchasing.
And I can put it in my monthly highlights to
That's
parents.
an awful lot of books at one time. And to put a list together like that, these are all the books.
Yeah, it's,
I don't know
it's,
how
but
much-
isn't
I don't
it
know the
already
volume
through
that
that?
we're
If that link was just in, hey, check out the.
Well, typically there are a lot that,
And they can
that
do that.
run in.
But that's just giving them like not every parent's gonna know that. And that way they're building that transparency of like, hey, here they are, without having to like hold you back.
Maybe we can send something out.
Or at least there's a statement from
All
me
the stuff
that
comes
says,
out from their principal, when their principal
I'm
does
not
this
including
newsletter,
a link
let's say,
to
here's the
Destiny
link,
just because we
everybody,
didn't
if you
have
wanna know
any
what's
books,
new in
so
our
that they don't
library,
feel
here's
like
the
I'm
link, so everybody.
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
find
Yeah.
it.
I think that might like help with that trust and transparency, but without holding you guys back from being able to purchase books until the library committee review. I mean, I can see the difficulty on both sides of that.
Yeah,
So
you
then
can't
if we
have
just
a library-
take this out.
A library review committee that's not even been
We're not gonna
formed.
collaborate
I think
anyway.
we could let parents know that there
was
is
just
this
sarcasm.
link and that you
Yeah.
can always check.
I think that would
I think it would be a lot of work for us to remember to
That's
constantly be trying to keep up with
Right.
letting the parents know. these
No,
things.
I'm not saying like, what did you say, like
No,
we have
I
a monthly
said
newsletter,
this
like if
is
there's a link at the bottom, like,
Oh,
okay,
okay.
if you wanna check out what was added,
Because I said,
that's just
we'll just get rid of
maybe
this and
helping
then.
us
Okay.
This is sarcasm.
Approving it.
So,
Yeah, that sounds so much.
yeah, so as long as there is some way to be inclusive of the parents within the protocol, then it doesn't have to be
So
in the
my
policy.
plan is once the policies are approved and then we get some more direction from Amy and Megan, I will fold all of that into the protocol and bring the protocol to the board.
Yeah.
That's my plan.
Our plan is to have it all dialed in and ready to go this summer, so that when everybody comes back,
We can all come out the gate running. Got it, okay.
Could you just, I just want to finish reading that one. For the 422, 12 months.
We're on 12.
Yeah. No, no book that was recently approved is not age appropriate for lower school. How the parents' concerns of this were ignored entirely. Okay.
There are two versions of that book,
Right.
and it sounds like they were maybe looking at the adult version instead of the
They were, as
10-year-old.
opposed to the, yeah, I saw that there was two different versions of that. You guys had adopted
It's adapted
the.
for younger,
So.
Yeah,
readers.
young readers doesn't have any vulgarity or anything in it.
It takes away very voice and very very subjective. Yes, exactly. It is very subjective. It's hard to figure out.
They didn't do the right book.
Between age obscene.
I mean,
Where are you at?
Oh, I'm just in
You're on
13.
13E.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I feel like the law definitely defines obscene, so I think we'll be good there.
What is age appropriate? Yeah, that's correct. There's one correct age appropriate obscene. Okay. As a parent, I would like clarification on whether all library books are approved as curriculum and thus can be assigned reading in a classroom.
No, that's not true.
Or if those assigned books are separately listed and must go through a more rigorous approval process.
Seems like they need to come
I'm
to this
hoping
committee. That would be clarification.
it's the latter. Thank you for including district residents on the list of who may challenge a book. I hear a lot that it is important to taxpayers to have a voice in the school district, especially when it comes to levy time. Oopsies. I would like to see a more proactive approach to ensuring the libraries are carefully reviewing material added and not just going off of the recommended ages on the book. In this day and age, kids are being asked to grow up too fast. Amen to that. And I find that these recommendations are often misguided. Again, I'm concerned that my definition of age appropriate is different than the librarian. I would love to trust that we could judge things similarly, but given that so many books had to be removed and that patrons were the ones that pointed it out, I'm concerned. Perhaps the librarians could inform the board of what books had been added to the library in the last month at the regular board meeting, and that could be listed in the minutes so the public parents. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we could do that
yeah,
also.
That's true, we could.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to see obscene materials is to be excluded, especially since it sounds like 100 books or more recently were removed from the libraries due to their inappropriate nature. Again, is there a more proactive way to set guidelines for the librarians, or do we feel like this exclusion of obscene materials is sufficient? Okie doke. Specifically to number 5, I believe this is opening our district to unnecessary liability. The books in the library have already gone through the process to be approved. Continually going through this process is a waste of time and allows people who want to stir the pot to make it unnecessarily muddy. What is number 5? Trust the school librarian to receive and process requests from students for review of any library materials. Well, we're not muddying any water, that's just the law.
We are opening ourselves up for,
but
that's
it's
the whole point, that's the law.
The version that changed when reviewing materials is concerning. I think the librarian and the principal should still be the first people to review the book, which they are. The library review committee should be part of the process.
But it was changed last week on number 5. Unless I'm reading it totally incorrectly. What
do you mean?
So on number 5,
yep.
Last week, it did say, 2 weeks ago, we talked about the library committee being in that like chain of command sort of thing. And then last week we changed it where it's crossed off librarian, principal, superintendent, and it just says the material in question will be reviewed by the library review committee.
Right.
So it did take out. But am I totally misunderstanding that?
No.
It did take out the librarian and the principal.
It had to do with the law. That's why we had to do it that way.
But not only the library committee is the law, correct? That's, I guess, where I was confused, because then when we were just talking about earlier, you said if a book is needed to be reviewed, you were saying the library and the principal are still, the librarian, sorry, and the principal are still the first person. But this, that we changed, it says the library review committee is the first.
Well, I think what's confusing here is that in the very beginning, it says, entrust the school librarian to receive and process requests from students, parents, custodians, or legal guardians of the student for review of any library materials, provided that the request is submitted by completing a library review. That's where I think the confusion is because this is for purchasing stuff for the library. So it should be, this first portion should be the librarian and the principal. Whereas the second part, the material in question, I think that's supposed to be like if anything is challenged, then yes, it's going to go to the library review committee. Is that the way it's supposed to be reading? Because it says it seems confusing. Yeah, it seems a bit confusing.
So the language of the law says, prior to the filing of a cause of action, the minor parent or legal guardian has provided written notice to the school or public library asking for the relocation of such material to a section designated for adults only within 30 days. Well, we don't even have an adults only, so it just gets pulled from the shelf. Upon receipt of the written notice and subsequent to the expiration of the 30 days, the institution's library board, which would be our review committee, or board of trustees.
Right. That's for books that are in question. This right here is talking about the purchase of books for the library, not a book in question, which is why I think I'm confused.
Oh,
okay. Number 5, because 5 is split. It's talking about library books, but then it's talking about a questionable book.
I don't think number 5 is talking about purchasing at all. It says
it's for review.
Receive and process requests for review. It's not anything about buying books.
Yeah, that one's specific to the
5.
review.
Okay, so I think.
But that does have to be the library review.
Maybe the part that says for review should be before from students so that it makes more sense. 'Cause I didn't read it that way.
Okay, so I think there's two things that were brought up, if I'm understanding correctly. When someone completes a review form, it's not just, is the review form, let me start over. Is the review form just for challenging a book, or is it for just saying, hey, I'm not sure that this book should be in our library? Because to me, those are two different things. Because if they're challenging the book, it has to be based on this law and the obscenity.
There used to be language in there, and I haven't looked at this iteration in a while, so I haven't memorized, but there used to be you could do a challenge, or if you wanted a book that was already approved in a discontinuing situation. So I do have language.
It used to say the uniform grievance thing, which isn't, which this.
So it took out the discontinuing piece, okay.
So we actually have two separate issues, and we can write our protocol.
I wrote
so
the
that
protocol through the lens of a challenge and a discontinuation.
But it's through this, using the same form, yes or no?
Yes, I mean, you would just, it's the same concept.
So then I would think the form should have two components. Either, I just want you to review this because I don't think it should be here, or I'm challenging it based on the law, that I think you're in violation of the law. And then if it's in violation of the law, it has to go to the library review committee. If it's just, I don't think it should be in the library, then it should go through the librarian, principal, and superintendent. However, the protocols then would be, if the librarian's just saying, nope, I think it's fine, well then it's the parent's responsibility to go to the principal, and then if the principal says, nope, the book is fine, then it's the parent's responsibility to go to the superintendent. Then if the superintendent says, no, I think it's fine, then it's the parent's responsibility to go to the board.
Yep.
Okay. What if the board says it's fine?
Then
it's
fine,
done,
because
the
board
board's
is the
butt is on the
ultimate.
line.
But I think just, if we're using the right language, like I think we just need to, the language needs to say, this law is specific to challenging. That list that you guys are going through, that's a discontinuing because they're existing
That's
books.
it, they're requesting a review of the books.
So current books in these are talking about, I want to challenge specific to that law, but there are books that we're just saying we're discontinuing because they haven't been checked out for 30 years, they have, whatever, you know what I mean?
So it is I would say it's two processes.
Yeah, I think I would say yes. So let me just do this.
Yes. Do you want to remove? Do you want to relocate it or you want to maintain it?
Material question to be reviewed by.
I don't know.
That doesn't make sense.
I know, we'll go over it at another meeting.
The librarian, the principal. Okay, so this is saying that if there is a question about material, it needs to go through all persons, the librarian and principal and superintendent for determination, not just the librarian saying, I think it's okay, and then carrying it on. So if there's a review, then I would think on the form, just brainstorming this, I guess, there needs to be a spot that librarian did it on this day so that there's supported documentation that knows that all three of these people did their due diligence. Or is it the librarian and then the librarian can say, well, if you don't agree with me, then you can take it to the principal.
That's
how
that has been the practice. So,
okay.
And oftentimes they'll talk to the librarian will listen to the concerns, and they'll sit down and actually look at it together and talk about where they land. And if the parent doesn't agree, then they have the conversation with the principal.
How do you know the difference between challenging the book's content and challenging the law?
We're gonna have to, it'll have to be specific in the policy. So this is actually review. We've got to change our language. So what she's doing right now is a parent is asking that we review a book in the library because we're not sure it belongs there. But they're not going to the level of challenge because maybe they're requesting, and this happened when I was at Betty Kiefer, we had a parent who just really didn't like magic, and they wanted us to remove
all the
Harry Potter.
I remember that.
And so they went to the librarian first, and then they came to me, and I just worked with the parent to make sure that their child couldn't check out the Harry Potter books, but explained to the parent that I understand that you don't appreciate this, but we have a lot of parents who do. And by allowing you to take it out because you have an issue with it, you are now making a choice for everybody else's child. And that parent heard that, and they were fine with the remedy. And that's what you're looking for, is the remedy. So if they don't get a remedy with the librarian and they don't get it with the principal, then they come to me, and we, and that's happened before. As the assistant superintendent, I dealt with that, and we came up with a remedy, so it didn't end up going to the board. But there may be a time where they just are adamant that I do not want Harry Potter in the library. They're going to end up in front of the board, and they're going to have that conversation with the board, but ultimately then the board's going to have to decide on that, and it's their approval, or their decision is final. There's nowhere else for them to go with that.
But our current gentrification process is specific to an individual parent / kid, so that should not ever have to go beyond that. The issue will be when it comes to the librarian principals, is when I want the book completely removed, not about just not my kid getting access, because I feel like we've addressed that. Now it's I want the book removed.
Right,
from everyone.
But if they're challenging based on the law, then they're challenging based on the belief that there is obscene material in the book. That's a specific. That's this law.
But then I can also just not want something in the library altogether, and it has nothing to do with the law. It's just it's too gory, or it's too whatever.
Okay, so if we change 5 to state, entrust the school librarian to receive and process requests from students, parents, custodians, or legal guardians of a student for review of any library materials, provided that the request is submitted by completing a library review form. The material in question will be reviewed by the librarian, the principal, and the superintendent for the determination of its educational value. If the question remains unresolved, the superintendent shall present the findings to the board for final disposition. Entrust the school librarian to receive and process requests from students, parents, custodians, or legal guardians of a student challenging, not challenges. Okay.
Can we make this specific to the law and say challenging any library materials
and then put the bill
based on the Idaho, whatever the new Idaho code's going to be, obscene materials.
Right now it's just House Bill 710, but they haven't put an Idaho code on it yet.
It's just House Bill 710.
Well, it's amending section 18, 15, 14.
Perfect. So that will be it.
Wait.
Do you want the little dilly down there?
I do.
Obscene materials.
To define the term. Amending chapter 15, title 18. Idaho Code. Oh, by the addition of new section 18-17B. 14. Chapter 15, so 1815.
How did you make
this
that
is
little?
A new section.
How did you make that little dude? Oh, you didn't make it yourself.
Copy and paste is our friend. Okay. So we'll put both laws there. They can search and find. Perfect. Or actually, let me see. Actually, this one actually talks about 1814 or 1815-14 is adding definitions. Okay.
That's actually where they go through the processes. Provided that the request is submitted by completing a library material review form. The challenged material will be reviewed by the library review committee, who will present its, what's that?
Yet to be named.
It will present its recommendations regarding library materials to the board for review and or approval.
Can we put right in there, the challenged material will be removed from library circulation pending a review?
That sounds better.
Because that's in the law.
That's because we have 30 days to remove it, and so I just want it right in there.
Will be removed from the, what'd you say?
Library circulation. Pending review.
Do you have to put the timeline on there so that they're making sure it's out before that 30 days? Is that necessary?
Well, we could put, I mean, that is the law, 30 days.
So Melanie, from your guys' standpoint, if you removed it and put it on hold, Destiny would still reflect it's there, correct? You guys wouldn't then manually go remove it from Destiny until the decision was made, right?
We just pull it off the shelf. We'll just pull it off. Put it behind our desk.
Physically removed.
Yeah, I just, because somebody could think, well, I can go to Destiny and see it, but it's physically removed off of the shelf, so there's no access.
Right.
Okay, so the challenged material will be physically removed from the library circulation within 30 days, pending review by the library review committee, who will present its findings regarding the library material to the board for review. That's all.
It's a lot of reviewing.
30 days. Period. Committee, material and present its recommendation.
So we're going to. There's still a lot of reviewing in there.
There is.
Can we say the library review committee will read the material and present its recommendation regarding those?
That's better.
And then that helps clarify, not just reviewing reviews.
Exactly.
So
Now it says they have to actually.
And that is going to be written into
So
the
before
protocols.
they review the material, the book's removed from the library?
Yes, that's the law. We have 30 days.
We take it out.
I'm gonna have it say the same
It's not
thing.
put on a do not
For
read
final
shelf in the back of the
Disposition.
library.
Those are all gonna be the ones that we want to read.
All right, so the library review committee will read the material and present its recommendation regarding the library material to the board for final disposition.
Perfect.
Are they presenting findings? No, you're just presenting findings.
And you could say the committee's recommendations will be presented if you don't want it written in the way that requires the committee to do the presenting.
What? Sorry, I was.
The way that reads, that's going to
Yeah.
be the library review committee that's going to present to the board. So we could write it so that the library review committee will read the material and the recommendation from the committee will be presented to the board if you don't want it to be them or require that they're the ones who present. I mean, Lynn can provide the recommendation to you. I don't know if it matters, but
well,
it reads so that the committee.
I think it does matter in the sense of people's expectations.
And that's fine. There can be a spokesperson for the library review committee that doesn't mind getting up and talking.
I actually think it might carry more weight with the community if
it comes from the
if it comes from the committee.
Is this committee, do you envision it being remote working or meeting in person?
They'll have to meet in person so that they can get the book so they can read it.
And then they'll read it separately, and then what I would see is they would come back together and have a conversation about what they saw and how it pertains to the law.
It's different than the supplemental.
Yeah.
Right, okay, that's what I was like, are we gonna go down the same problems? Is that, okay.
Because they're going to have to come to a consensus about whether they're recommending that this be
like a jury.
permanently removed or that it remains in the library.
So you'll have a challenge book club.
Thanks very much. Those are the books that the kids are gonna run to the public library to check out because they wanna see what's so bad.
They actually did that in Florida. There was a segment on 60 Minutes called 97 Books. And there were 97 books that they wanted pulled, that they were adamant. So they put
Right,
a
so the
review
library
committee
review
together.
committee will
And of the
read the
97,
material, present
only
its
5 they
recommendation
took off. The
regarding
other 92 were
the
fine. But
library
they had
material
3 people read,
to
at
the
least
superintendent,
3
who will
people read
present
the
the
book,
findings.
read each book.
Oh,
So that you
okay,
had,
that's
possibly you had a pro, possibly you had a con, and then you had that point in the
I think
middle
that's
that would
right.
determine which way it went. So, it was good.
We're gonna reword this. I know.
Can we just say the library review committee will read the material and the recommendations will be provided or presented to the board, and then we don't have to define who's gonna present it?
Well,
It could be the
because-
committee that does it.
Technically, it has to be you. If you get technical.
It does.
You're our employee. You are the only employee we have.
Right, but could I could have the committee there to answer questions.
Yeah,
the board might
you can have the committee
Okay.
there.
I just think it might make the community feel a little bit better if they're actually hearing from the committee members and not just letting them.
Except at the end of the day,
Right.
the board will ask, what is your recommendation?
Exactly.
So the recommendation has to come from you. It can't come from the committee.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Yep, but yep, I'll just invite
Are you on the committee? Or I guess not, the one that doesn't exist. Will
You like to read?
She's the only member of the committee at this moment.
But no,
Love
you'll
to
just hear
read.
from the committee.
In church, apparently.
In church,
You're gonna be
bad things.
Join the committee.
We were literally at Apple Baptist for a town hall meeting, and Mariana brought some excerpts from books, and the pastors of Apple Baptist are sitting, and we weren't just like in a room at the church, we were in the chapel, and we were reading these, and I'm like, we're not reading bad things at church. It was terrible.
All right. So, is that better?
Yep.
All right. Okay. All right. Maybe we'll.
Did we make it through all the comments?
No, not yet.
How many more? This little toddler's still pretty good over there.
Wait, okay.
Oh yeah, there's still quite a few space, a lot of space between the.
So okay, so we addressed that one. In regard to number 6, provide a fair and unbiased presentation of information representing varying viewpoints. How does fiction text play into this? Well, I don't think we can clarify that in policy. Most fiction is biased, and that's the purpose of reading fiction text.
I don't.
That's definitely somebody who reads at a very high level.
Number 5 seems as though we are missing a few steps. If a parent submits a library review form, it would make more sense to have the form start. Okay, we do.
Perfect.
Yay!
Preemptive.
Check.
Very concerned about the library committee. There should be 0 politically extreme community members on this committee.
Oh, how are you about that?
They are ruining our community and schools. Please ask level-headed community members to be on the committee. Okie doke.
Yeah.
All right. Number 3 needs to include reference to adhering to the new Children's School and Library Protection Act passed in April 2024.
In case you didn't know.
That's the First Amendment language.
That's the law, right?
That's the First Amendment.
Yeah.
Number 5 needs to include reference to a district resident also having the option to submit requests for review because district residents are included in the lower paragraph beginning with any student, parent, custodian. Number 5, what are they talking about?
That's the one we just went over. We changed it to 5 and 6.
Okay, what they're saying.
Community members.
District. Hold on, it's.
As it says it down below too.
It does.
District residents.
Or district resident.
Just asking.
regarding this paragraph, district residents or parents, guardians of students attending the district may be allowed access to, okay, instead of maybe, it seems that are is more appropriate and less exclusionary. Since access to the books would need the principal's approval, there is no need to be so tentative in the policy by using maybe. Okay. So what they're saying is, instead of maybe, which has been our language, they should be students attending the district are allowed access to library books at the discretion of the building principal.
Which actually means maybe.
Yeah, yes, I was gonna say, it needs to say maybe.
I don't think it's maybe like one word, it's
No.
maybe allowed. Maybe.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
and
Yeah.
they-
It's not maybe, it's not one word.
Yeah, it's not, yeah, I think the,
Right, but what they're saying is that by choosing the word may,
as opposed to
are.
It's a difference between shall and may, right? That's what they're looking for.
Yeah, because,
Which would change some other policies.
Well, and I think it needs to stay maybe because you've got district people, district residents,
It's
who you
allowed.
don't want them to come past your
Right, yeah,
office.
if they,
again,
Yeah.
we're talking about the book. We're not talking
No,
about
no, no, no,
access to the library.
I understand that.
Okay.
But meaning that it's up to the principal is what I mean. So may be, meaning that it's up to the principal's discretion.
Okay, so here's what
Can
we're
it
gonna do.
say shall be
Just
allowed
because.
access to
well,
at
but
discretion?
if you, so shall in legal terms means must.
Absolutely.
And so, because we have the at the discretion of the building principal, that could become problematic.
So I have a talking point.
May seems like it
I
should be.
think they're just not understanding what maybe
I wonder if
actually means.
right,
Is
that's
that
what it
means?
means.
It's exactly, like, it's just.
No, I think they're reading it correctly. I think they're just wanting us to not be so soft and to have stronger words.
If you're going to be allowing them physically in the school, which again, like from a safety standpoint, I don't want it to be open that way, but if the board decides to let them actually come to the school to view the book, there are some people in our community that aren't allowed on school grounds. So I think you have to have a little bit softer language that there are certain circumstances in which those people would not be allowed, just from a safety standpoint.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good point.
I mean, I don't want to close the doors on our community and having input in this at all, but I do think from a safety standpoint, we have to have some.
But I think that you bring up a valid point of there are people not allowed on our grounds for whatever reason, but this says they're allowed to, this is a loophole for them.
Right. So I think you just be
This
careful there.
includes everybody.
Well, I don't know that it's a loophole, because if there's legal grounds for someone not to be on school grounds, this policy doesn't supersede the legal authority that says you cannot be on school grounds.
And it
I mean,
does
that's
say
the law.
at the discretion of the building principal.
It does.
So if the principal knows they can't be on grounds, they're not going to be on grounds.
Right. So I'll put the R there. We can have the board make that
What
decision.
if you just put may allow access to?
It doesn't.
It says may be allowed access to library books at the discretion of the building principal. So if it changed to attending the district are allowed access to library books at the discretion of the principal.
I think that still gives it.
I think it's still saying the same thing. But that's just my interpretation. So
I can read it that way too.
I wonder if the reason we are struggling so much with this is because I think we're thinking about it from a building safety perspective. They're just looking at, can I have access to the book, not to the building.
Right.
So that's why we're struggling so much. If there was a way to say, I mean, anybody, as far as I'm concerned, anybody who lives in the district can have access to the book.
Right. And
It's just a question of how they're on school campus to get the book or not.
But then you've got an issue of how do you check that book out to somebody that has no account? I think that we could sufficiently include the community, and I am all for the community having input on this, so I'm not trying to block any of that.
I think this is all good.
I think we can sufficiently
struggling.
include the community without actually having them
have the book in their hand. They all have access to view the books that we have and to question the books that we have. And I do feel like we have a lot of so many public libraries that they could find the book to read it themselves. I think we need to give them access and the ability to question, but not necessarily have our physical book from our library. And that way you don't have the issues of how do you check the book out to them. That I think is creating a lot more work than is necessary to allow them to question the book. Yeah, I'm not saying that we change this. It just dawned on me that I think the reason we're struggling over it so much is I think the patrons are looking at it as, are you limiting who's going to be able to access a book so that we can see if it's worth having in the library? And we're looking at it from a building safety standpoint. That's the rub. I think the way it's written, it protects the building and still gives access.
Can we just send it like in district mail to the district office, and then they don't have to come to the school? They can pick it up here.
And there are lots of things we could do.
Safety.
But not pick it up here. They could come here and look at it, and they'd have to leave it here. Yes.
Okay, so excellent that the new Idaho Code 1815-14 has been included in number 9 regarding the sentence, the librarian of each school shall be responsible for ensuring the librarian's collection. It seems that regularly is too vague and allows for enormous latitude. Why not specify a time frame not less than once each school year? So what is that? Regarding the sentence, number 9.
Did Wendy leave?
Yeah. There is no 9.
How often do you guys weed though? Do you do that every year? You kind of look at your
When we have
collections?
Yeah, when we have time. I still have to finish going through my nonfiction because I got $5,000 worth of new books. But I haven't even had the time to finish weeding and put my new stuff out yet because we've been dealing with all of this.
I can tell you what I observed at Spirit Lake because my office was in the library. As Margene went through the bookshelves, she would check the books that hadn't been there checked out for a long time, and she would pull them from the shelf.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how often, if that's part of like the end of the year.
I think it happened at least once a year. When they go at least at the elementary level, when they have to.
There is no protocol of when you have to weed.
No, we just do it when we get the chance.
Right. That was the.
But yeah, when I do inventory, when I'm doing inventory, I'm like, this book looks really old, and I put it on the bottom of my shelf, and I just keep moving through inventory. And
somebody else added that. Okay. But it's all good.
I think if you assign a specific time frame and frequency to the weeding, I think that's just going to be harder to.
I don't know who's monitoring.
Yeah, and I think there's probably a lot of weeding that's happening as we have these lists and stuff. Anyway, I think the frequency kind of complicates it.
Okay, they were on 2510, and 2510 there is a 9.
Okay.
It's represent, and this is in selecting the materials, they'll consider whether the materials represent an age appropriate material within the grade band at each school. So this person is stating, it seems that regularly is too vague and allows enormous
They're actually
latitude.
looking at, that one is, that's not that one. That one is the weeding, the reviewing. Which was actually in that 2,500, I thought. It didn't have a 9 next to it, but it talked about regularly reviewing the collection.
Well, you just had it under reading, but there was no number.
Selection.
That was library, school, responsible for ensuring the student's collection is reviewed regularly.
Oh, there it is.
But there's no number.
Right there, that's what they're saying. Should there be a time frame? The problem with putting a time frame in, I guess, it's then who's responsible for verifying that it happened within that time frame. And every library is going to do it a little bit differently.
Well,
some will do it as they're putting new books on the shelves. They're going to pull out books that haven't been checked out for a while.
Well, and they switched it from regular to once a year, but once a year would still seem like a pretty broad time frame too. So I mean, if that made somebody feel better about giving it a number.
I
Are the librarians able to, through their checkout system, go through and see which books have not been checked out for?
Oh, yeah.
So that would help a lot.
Well, that's what we do when we go through and we do inventory and we do meeting. We'll go through and we look at every single book that we pull off the shelf.
Yeah.
To see when the last time it was that it was checked out, what the state of the book looks like, so.
It still has one of those little cards with a stamp on it, it's probably.
I don't use red ink, so I still have books that have those in there though? Yeah.
I know that I have books that have been weeded out of the library in my book collection in my office. so.
Yeah, discarded.
We're
So
constantly,
we can't
we
specify a
discard,
time frame,
Constantly
just
discard.
due
but we
to
don't do full
the
collections all the
responsibilities
time.
is
No.
what I hear you saying, yeah, okay.
It's,
I have
yeah,
additional
more of
comments,
a
but I do,
Yeah,
which very much appreciate the opportunity to
Right.
have provided.
we are regularly doing it constantly.
Gifts in the.
Okay. So she's
Well, and I
saying
can imagine
this,
how many books are in the middle school and the high schools. Because
oopsies.
Yeah.
the elementaries have at least 10,000 books.
Oh, yeah,
in
but they're
them.
smaller books, yeah. Yeah, they have a lot. It's a big process.
That's this.
Yeah.
Well,
That's what we're doing. Oh, she wants a reference down there?
oh, okay, yeah, we do need to put it in there. Team
17B, I think what you said.
14.
Oh, that's the definition.
Right, but, 17. Can't spell.
Children's school and library protection. Good catch.
That is a good catch, yes. Okay, make that go away. Okay, there we are. Alright, so, it is standard practice that community members not directly connected to schools can request that materials be removed. Oh, is it? Why can't students, staff, or guardians request materials to be added?
They can. Staff and students do it all the time, but we can, I mean.
We always take requests.
Yep.
That's probably where we get most of our orders from.
What?
I think there's, up above is where the language is about the, choose, what books to choose, and they do it in collaboration with staff.
That's what it is.
Oh, right there. Entrust the library to receive and process requests from students, parents, custodians.
Wake up.
Oh, now it's review. Sorry, there's the review.
Right, we don't state that on here. Maybe we should.
It seems like it's in one of ours. Was it in 2510 instead?
Oh, that's P.
I think I remember that language too.
Yeah, I thought we talked about collaborating. Maybe we didn't have it in there. Yeah, here we go. 2510P, in collaboration with the building staff is what.
Up at the very top is where.
Acquisition of new materials in collaboration with the building staff. But it doesn't say students, and we definitely. But do you want to have that like as far as like I don't want them to have to like collaborate with students and parents to add new material, but maybe like just another sentence that they also accept requests from
students
And parents.
Would that make sense?
They also take into consideration requests from parents.
Yeah,
and students,
yeah.
From students and parents.
So it's not requiring you have to consult with them and collaborate beforehand, but just that you would accept the request.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
What's the graduating class up there? So graduating class.
Am I including
We already have staff.
what were we saying?
I was gonna say, I don't think that community members are ever gonna request that we have anything in our
Because they
library.
won't have access to it, but, so parents, students and
Students
parents.
and families, and LJSD families.
Are also considered. So.
Oh.
What if you have a family that requests?
Hi, we're almost done.
Then I'll tell
You
them
come on
it's
and have a seat.
inappropriate.
Welcome to the party.
Request inappropriate.
Anywhere you want.
Okay. Sit the far end.
Okay. So material requests from students and district families are also considered. We're almost over.
In the ordering process,
There we go.
as part of the ordering process.
Okay. Okay. So does that make sense? All right. Wait, where are we? We're over here. Okay. Is it standard practice that community members not directly connected to schools can request that materials be removed? Yes. Why can't students, staff, or guardians request? Okay, we already did that. We're glad you're affirming the First Amendment. No great nation was built on book bans. All right. We're glad students can request materials. How are materials deemed inappropriate? Nothing is in Idaho code. Obscenity definition has anything to do with adult relationships such as straight or gay, married, or cohabitating, or coarse descriptions of sexual acts would usually be considered obscene. Materials that contain descriptions of relationships should not be banned for that reason alone.
Well, and that's all in the law.
And that's what we gotta
No, I
get.
think they should be banned for the relationship alone.
Yeah.
Right.
No, yeah.
That, yeah,
Yeah.
and, yeah, the law specifically talks about the act of,
Yeah.
so our attorney has weighed in and said just merely being
Right.
a homosexual with no homosexuality or acts of, that's a state of being versus, this. So
Okay.
there are some gray areas there that legal counsel will have to weigh in on, but
Yeah.
there.
Oh, yeah. This.
So
Made it.
It would look like that goes through the committee, legal would be,
Issue with the paragraph.
if it was even just a gay couple.
In the book, legal is contacted, or?
Well, we'll already have,
District
I already have
students to
her.
peruse and check out. District residents are not allowed to just come in
She's already
and
given
look
me
through
that
our
guidance,
libraries.
so I have it.
That is a
ready.
safety issue. Nothing in these policies allows that to occur. The paragraph should read, students attending the district. There is also an issue in the last paragraph, any student, parent, custodian of a or a district person may challenge material. I still believe this opens a can of worms regarding libraries. The list we have.
That was mine.
Yeah.
I
I
know. We've already addressed
We
it.
addressed it.
All right. As mentioned in the board meeting minutes of December 22, J12 curriculum, Chair Thompson stated that there was never an intent for the board to approve every single book. This is in direct conflict with the second to the last paragraph stating the board is responsible for approving all selected materials. This was mentioned at the previous policy meetings, but apparently dismissed.
It was dismissed.
Okay.
I don't know if we dismissed it or if we just didn't continue on with it, but that was the discrepancy I was trying to bring up, and I couldn't think of it right at the end as we left and everything.
Well,
So-
here's the reality. If a library book is within this district campus and it's given to students, the board does have to approve that. What I was intending at the December 2022 meeting was the
Right.
fact that we have 40 pages of
on the
books,
supplemental curriculum.
and that under supplemental curriculum, and that it wasn't ever the board's intent for it to be this cumbersome.
Right.
So I guess my poor use of language should not have occurred, but it is the board's responsibility to approve the books.
And I understand that. I just was thinking that it needed to be, the wording needed to be changed only because we're not sending you our huge lists of
Correct.
books anymore. So, and our principal is the one that is now signing off on our purchases.
Didn't we kind of state that in one of them where the board is trusting the librarian and ultimately the superintendent as
right,
their
and that's
designee?
under 25P, I think. It's towards the bottom, I think. No, maybe not this one. It was on one of them.
Maybe
2500, 2510.
The 2510 pieces on selecting library materials the librarian will consider. You took out the designee part. I don't know if that's what you were
Oh, right there.
asking.
It was in that pot right there. School librarians are entrusted with the responsibility, blah, 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 blah. The board is responsible for approving all selected materials. The board entrusts the superintendent to oversee the librarians and the selection of library materials.
Right.
So
I mean, the ultimate responsibility lies within the board, which is why, if there is a problem, it has to come to the board for approval or denial.
No, and no, that's right. I just, somehow I missed.
Yeah, because we spent.
I might have just missed something then.
Okay.
Spent a little bit of time on that part of it.
Yeah. That
Number
was
two.
just my concern.
Okay, number 2 just doesn't seem like the wording is correct or works.
Yeah, it just
So that's on P.
Yeah.
Perhaps it should say something like are integral to the instructional goals, curriculum, extracurricular programs, or free reading.
I didn't know how else to put that because it doesn't. It says in selecting library materials, the librarian will consider whether the materials are integral to the instructional goals, curricular, or extracurricular programs of the school. And I thought it needed to say curriculum, extracurricular programs, and then also because we have students that just like to come in and get their books for their leisure reading, for their free reading, that probably needed to be said in there as well. Extracurricular programs would be like IBOB, the Idaho Teen Reading Challenge, those kinds of things. That's not, it's not including the books that kids just want to come in and read. And I didn't know if that needed to be added in there.
Okay, instructional goals, curriculum. Oopsie.
What would you call that? Like just leisure reading, or?
I was trying to think of what you would call it, but it's just free reading. I mean, I don't know how else. Reading for pleasure. Reading for pleasure.
Independent. Interesting.
Yeah.
Plays or something.
Right.
And it's not, it's pleasure, but it's also,
Right.
they're building their background information.
Exactly.
That they're passionate about.
Yeah.
Students, yeah. What's that? Yeah, I know. I want to get through all of these suckers, of these students. And staff.
Independent reading. There you go. That's a good one. That's the word.
Michelle came up with that all on her own.
I couldn't. 61-year-old brain couldn't think of it.
Okay, so are integral to the instructional goals, curricular, extracurricular programs, or independent reading of the students and staff at the school. Does that help make that better?
That makes more sense.
Okay, so on that note,
Encompasses everything. More inclusive.
Yeah, it
Yes.
encompasses everything.
we are at 6:33. Policy committee is now over.